The Brown family was supposed to come together to find solace in the shared grief of losing their son, Garrison. But what we saw instead was a raw display of dysfunction, confusion, and painful truths that no one was prepared for. As the family gathered for the memorial, emotions were running high, but it wasn't just the grief of Garrison's loss that took center stage. No, this was something deeper, something much more troubling. Cody Brown, the father, couldn't seem to connect with his children, especially his eldest son Logan, who was desperately trying to hold it all together. And then there's Robin. At a time when the family needed unity, comfort, and compassion, Robin's actions were nothing short of controversial. From her awkward comments to her selfish behaviors, she turned what was meant to be a respectful moment into something deeply uncomfortable. What is happening within this family? Can they ever find a way to heal, or has the damage already been done? Stay tuned because the truth is much darker than you might think. Hi, I'm Olivia from TLC's Sister Wives Secrets, and today we're diving deep into one of the most emotional and controversial moments in the Brown family's journey. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and leave your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what you think about this family drama. We've all seen Robin in the past, trying to navigate her role in the family, often balancing the fine line between being Cody's wife and being a stepmother to his children. But in this episode, something felt off. Robin, instead of offering comfort, seemed completely absorbed in her own needs and emotions, showing an alarming lack of sensitivity to the family's collective grief. Let's start with the way she talked about Cody. There was this moment at the memorial when Robin openly shared how she was feeling drawn to him, even in the midst of a deeply emotional and somber occasion. Now I get it. She's his wife, and there's love between them. But this wasn't the time or the place to be making comments like that. The family had just gathered to mourn the loss of Garrison, and yet Robin, seemingly unaware of the awkwardness, starts openly speaking about her attraction to Cody, all while others around her are struggling with their own emotions. It's a level of tone deafness that honestly left fans shocked. We've seen Robin try to be a unifier before, but here, she's so out of touch with what's happening around her. How is it possible that she couldn't see how out of place her comments were? Robin's behavior wasn't just a little tone deaf, it was an outright disregard for the emotional heaviness of the situation. And what's worse is how her actions seemed to center her feelings, rather than the collective loss the family was trying to process. You could see how uncomfortable the other family members were with her behavior. Cody, as we know, has been in a tough spot, trying to balance his relationships with all his wives and children, but even he couldn't defend Robin in this moment. His silence spoke volumes. And this is something that fans have been pointing out for a while. Robin's inability to see the bigger picture. While the family was grieving, she was focusing on herself, her relationship with Cody, and how she was feeling, rather than on the family's collective emotional needs. Now, let's talk about the moment where she asked for a private moment with Cody during the memorial. It was just baffling. The rest of the family was in a state of grief and mourning, yet Robin took it upon herself to demand that time with Cody. Did she forget where she was? Or, more importantly, who was around her? It was as though she was in her own little world, completely disregarding the fact that there were people who needed support, especially Cody's children, who were suffering from a profound loss. Instead of taking the opportunity to comfort his kids, Robin seemed more interested in cementing her emotional connection with Cody. Now, I don't want to paint Robin as the villain here. She is human, and she's grieving too. But it's hard to ignore the fact that her actions in this particular episode screamed self-centeredness. When you're in a family like the Browns, where there are so many dynamics, so many people to care for, and so much emotional baggage, you have to be aware of the bigger picture. You can't just take the spotlight and make everything about you, even if you're going through your own emotional turmoil. But here's the kicker. Robin's behavior wasn't just insensitive, it was telling. It shows the cracks in her relationship with the other wives and children. We've seen this before with the favoritism that's often discussed among the wives, and this moment at the memorial felt like it amplified that divide. It wasn't just that Robin was being thoughtless. This situation underscored how disconnected she's become from the larger family unit. And for the fans watching, that, a hard pill to swallow. Many have pointed out how uncomfortable they felt for the other family members, who were trying to grieve and process their emotions while Robin seemed stuck in her own world. We also have to wonder, what does this mean for her relationship with Cody? Yes, she is his wife, and yes, there is clearly a strong emotional bond between them. But at a time when the family is facing loss, how much of that bond is based on genuine emotional connection, and how much of it is about self-preservation and isolation from the rest of the family? It's moments like these that force us to question whether Robin truly understands the complex dynamics of the Brown family, or if she's simply caught up in her own little bubble. To be fair, we've seen glimpses of Robin's vulnerability, and we know that she's not a malicious person. But the timing of her actions during Garrison's memorial felt like a complete disregard for the grief of those around her. Instead of being there for Cody's children, she was more focused on making sure her relationship with him was front and center. And that's the issue. When you're part of a large, complex family, you can't afford to be so wrapped up in your own emotions, especially when others around you are struggling with loss. I don't think Robin necessarily meant to hurt anyone, but she certainly didn't help the situation. What does that say about the emotional dynamics in this family? The question remains, can the Browns ever truly come together if they can't even navigate something as basic as offering support during a memorial? And more importantly, will Robin ever understand the impact of her behavior? Or will she remain blissfully unaware of the emotional damage she's contributing to? At the end of the day, the memorial for Garrison should have been about honoring him, grieving together, and finding healing. But instead, it became an uncomfortable stage for Robin's emotional missteps. It wasn't just the fact that she made things about her. It was the fact that her actions highlighted an ongoing problem within the Brown family, where certain members are more connected to Cody than to each other. That divide is exactly what fans have been picking up on for seasons now. It's a pattern that continues to play out, one emotional misstep at a time. At the heart of the emotional turmoil in this episode is Cody's strained relationship with his children, particularly his eldest son, Logan. This moment at the memorial felt like a glaring spotlight on the deep divides within the Brown family, especially when it comes to Cody's inability to connect with his kids during times of grief. It wasn't just about Robin's insensitivity, it was also about Cody's emotional distance from the very children who needed him the most. Throughout the episode, Cody's interactions with his children felt cold. There was this one moment where Logan, who has always tried to maintain a level of maturity and support for his family, offered to help with the burial. You would think, given the emotional weight of the situation, that Cody would seize this opportunity to bond with his son, to show him some kind of comfort or appreciation. Instead, Cody's response was dismissive, almost as if Logan's offer of help wasn't even worth acknowledging. It was an eye-opening moment. Here was a son reaching out, trying to ease the burden of grief, and Cody couldn't even acknowledge him in a meaningful way. It's moments like these that really get under your skin because they make you question the emotional distance between Cody and his children. How did we get here? We've seen Cody's relationships with his kids become more and more strained over the years, but seeing it play out so blatantly in this episode made it feel raw, real, and almost impossible to ignore. It was clear that Cody was more focused on managing his relationship with Robin than he was with trying to heal the wounds in his relationship with his kids. And the thing is, his kids, especially Logan, have been so patient with him. They've seen the way he prioritizes his relationship with Robin, often to the detriment of the family dynamic, and they've quietly suffered the fallout. But what really stood out in this episode was Cody's failure to even try to console his children. Instead of comforting Logan and his siblings who were hurting, Cody seemed disconnected, emotionally unavailable, and distant. The kind of support his children were yearning for was simply not there. His inability to offer comfort, especially during such a heartbreaking moment, only underscores the emotional rift between him and his kids. The audience saw that, and it was hard not to feel the weight of that disappointment. It wasn't just about grief. It was about Cody's failure to be a father when his kids needed him the most. Now, we've seen Cody struggle with his relationships with his children before. He's talked openly about the challenges of raising a large family, and we've watched as his relationships with some of his children have become more and more strained over time. But this episode brought those tensions to a head. There was something about the loss of Garrison, the tragedy that should have brought the family together, that made Cody's failure to connect with his children even more glaring. As a father, Cody should have been the one holding the family together, offering support, and showing his kids that he was there for them. Instead, he was more focused on maintaining the emotional equilibrium with Robin and her children, leaving his biological kids to fend for themselves in a time of unimaginable loss. It's heartbreaking, really, and you have to wonder, how much longer can this go on? How much longer can Cody ignore the emotional needs of his children while he tries to keep the peace with Robin? We've seen how deeply his kids have been hurt by this emotional neglect, and you can't help but think that there are consequences for treating your children like this. What will the fallout be? And, more importantly, will Cody ever recognize just how deeply he's alienated the very people who need him? As much as we all want to believe that Cody is just a product of difficult circumstances, divorce, multiple relationships, and the complicated dynamics of polygamy, there comes a point where you can't ignore the role he's played in the emotional disconnect between him and his children. It's one thing to be a distant parent because of external factors, but it's another to repeatedly choose to distance yourself from your kids when they're clearly reaching out. Fans have been noticing the cracks in Cody's relationship with his children for seasons now. From their limited screen time together to the palpable emotional distance, it's been clear that Cody's priorities have often been misaligned. And this episode was a devastating reminder that the emotional rift between him and his kids isn't something that can be swept under the rug any longer. The children are grown now, and they're not going to just sit back and accept emotional neglect. They've got their own lives, their own struggles, and their own boundaries. The longer Cody ignores these issues, the harder it will be for him to rebuild any meaningful relationship with them. This isn't just about one bad moment at a memorial, it's about years of emotional distance, broken promises, and failed attempts at connection. As fans, we're left wondering, can this family ever heal? Will Cody finally open his eyes and recognize what he's losing? Or will he continue down the same path, blind to the pain his children are enduring? The emotional divide is wider than ever, and it's heartbreaking to watch the family crumble under the weight of it all. Cody has a lot of work to do if he's going to repair his relationship with his kids, and the clock is ticking. There's something uniquely painful about watching a family torn apart by grief. Normally, you'd expect a tragic loss to bring people closer together, to force them to confront their emotions and heal together. But what happened with the Brown family during the memorial for Garrison was something else. Instead of uniting in the face of sorrow, the family was exposed for all the deep, unresolved tensions that have been simmering for years. It's as if the grief didn't bring them closer. It drove an even bigger wedge between them, revealing the raw emotional fractures that were already there. One of the most striking aspects of this memorial episode was how divided everyone seemed. The grief was palpable. Yes, but instead of finding solace in each other, each family member retreated further into their own corners, unable or unwilling to connect. The episode was an emotional roller coaster, with moments of sadness quickly turning into feelings of frustration, anger, and confusion. In the midst of such a profound loss, the Brown family couldn't seem to escape their internal conflicts, and we, as viewers, couldn't help but feel the sting of their disconnection. Take, for example, the way Robin and Cody seemed to prioritize their relationship over the mourning process. Here's a couple who, despite being at the memorial for their son, managed to insert their own emotional needs into the situation. At a time when one would expect the focus to be on the family's collective grief, Robin was seen making comments about her attraction to Cody, something that many viewers found incredibly inappropriate. It was as if Robin couldn't see the bigger picture, couldn't understand that this moment wasn't about her and Cody's relationship. But this is a recurring theme in the Brown family. Instead of finding solace in each other, Robin and Cody seem to be more focused on themselves, leaving the rest of the family to deal with their own pain alone. Meanwhile, Cody's failure to comfort his children during this difficult time only made things worse. Instead of taking on the role of the father, the patriarch, the one who should lead the family through grief, Cody became increasingly distant. His emotional neglect of his children, particularly Logan, was more than just a father failing his kids. It was a visual manifestation of the deep emotional divides that had been festering within this family for years. When the family needed him most, Cody wasn't there. And not only was he not there emotionally, but he also didn't seem to understand how his actions, or lack thereof, were further tearing apart the family. In many ways, the memorial became a metaphor for what was already happening behind closed doors, a family slowly disintegrating because of years of unresolved tension, favoritism, and a lack of real communication. The grief of losing Garrison should have been a rallying point, a moment to pull the family together, but instead, it exposed the dysfunction that had been simmering beneath the surface for so long. Watching these broken relationships unfold in such an intimate setting made the whole situation feel even more tragic. What was supposed to be a moment of closure and remembrance became, for many of the Browns, just another reminder of how deeply divided they've become. As fans, we've been watching the Brown family struggle for years, but this episode was something different. It felt like the culmination of everything that had been brewing under the surface, everything that had been ignored, swept under the rug, or avoided. The family's grief didn't bring them closer together. It tore them apart. And what's worse, they didn't seem capable of recognizing or confronting the rifts that were clearly driving them further apart. It was as if the weight of their grief was simply too much for them to bear, and instead of leaning on each other, they became more isolated. This family, which was once supposed to be the picture of togetherness and love, has been broken for a long time now, and what was supposed to be a moment of collective mourning became a stark reminder that the Browns, especially Cody, haven't been able to heal their own wounds, let alone help each other heal. It's a tough pill to swallow because we, as fans, have always rooted for them, hoped they could come together and make things work. But this episode painted a very different picture. The divisions within this family are deep, and grief, instead of being a healing process, became a catalyst for further emotional destruction. What happens now? How do they move forward from here? Can the Browns ever mend their fractured relationships? Or has the damage done been too much to overcome? The family has a long road ahead of them, and it's impossible to ignore how much work is needed to rebuild the bonds that have been broken. It's one thing to witness the breakdown of a family, but it's another thing entirely when you, as the viewer, feel manipulated by the very people who are supposed to be telling an authentic story. The emotional drama surrounding the memorial for Garrison Brown wasn't just about the family's struggles. It was also about the way the show's producers and editors chose to depict those struggles. And let me tell you, the editorial decisions made in this episode have sparked quite a backlash from fans. We all know that reality TV isn't 100% real. There's always an element of editing, of choosing which moments to show and which ones to cut, which can drastically change how a situation is portrayed. But when the editing feels like it's taking an already painful moment and twisting it into something that feels more like an emotional exploitation, that's where things get tricky. And that's exactly what many fans have felt watching this memorial episode. Let's start with Robin. We already talked about her behavior, how her comments about being attracted to Cody during such an emotionally heavy time rubbed viewers the wrong way. But what's even more frustrating is how the editors seem to highlight these moments, almost as if they were deliberately trying to paint Robin as this insensitive, self-centered figure. You can almost feel the manipulation as the cameras zoom in on her, capturing her behavior in stark contrast to the grief and sorrow surrounding her. It's not just her actions, it's the way those actions are framed that has fans up in arms. But here's the thing. Was this portrayal truly authentic, or was it exaggerated for dramatic effect? Robin's behavior in the memorial episode certainly caught our attention, but the editing choices made it feel like her moments of emotional obliviousness were pushed front and center, possibly to create a narrative around her that would be easy for viewers to latch onto. The producers knew exactly what they were doing. Robin was positioned as the villain, and that's a hard role to shake off once it's been set. On the flip side, Cody's emotional disconnect with his children, especially Logan, was also framed in a way that magnified the distance between them. His coldness, his refusal to comfort his children, was highlighted, in a way that made it almost impossible to ignore the severity of their relationship breakdown. And here's where it gets tricky. Was this portrayal an accurate reflection of what actually happened, or was it manipulated for dramatic effect? When you watch a reality show, especially one like Sister Wives, you want to see the raw, real emotions of the family. But there's a fine line between showing authenticity and using the rawness of their pain to create a sensationalized narrative. And it's no secret that viewers have felt frustrated by the way the Brown family's struggles are sometimes handled. It feels like the editors are leaning into the drama rather than letting the story unfold in a more natural way. And that leads to questions about whether the Browns' pain is being used for entertainment rather than for meaningful storytelling. The backlash from fans has been loud and clear. The editing choices made the episode feel less like a heartfelt memorial and more like a reality TV spectacle. Fans are calling out the producers for sensationalizing the family's grief, for pushing Robin's awkward behavior to the forefront, and for showcasing Cody's emotional neglect in a way that felt less about reality and more about creating drama. And as viewers, it's hard not to feel the tension, like we're being asked to watch these family members suffer for the sake of entertainment. But let's be honest here. What's the line between providing a raw look into a family's turmoil and simply using that turmoil to generate views and discussions? Sister Wives has never shied away from showing the complexities of polygamy and family life, but this episode felt different. It was almost as if the producers were intentionally pulling on the heartstrings of viewers, not for the sake of truth, but for the sake of drama. And that's what's so troubling. When the emotional pain of real people is used as a vehicle for entertainment, it raises some serious ethical questions about how far reality TV should go in crafting its narrative. For many, the biggest frustration was how these edits took the opportunity for a genuine moment of mourning and turned it into something more uncomfortable. Instead of honoring Garrison's memory, the focus was placed squarely on the dysfunction of the family. The audience was left wondering, was this really the best way to remember him? Or was this episode, with its dramatic focus on personal conflicts, an exploitation of the family's grief for the sake of television ratings? As the backlash grows, we're left wondering whether Sister Wives will reconsider how it handles these sensitive moments in the future. Will the Browns continue to be showcased as a family in constant turmoil, with every emotional moment turned into entertainment? Or will there be a shift towards portraying them in a more balanced, compassionate light? It's clear that these editorial decisions, whether intentional or not, have left a bitter taste in the mouths of many fans. And while some may argue that it's the nature of reality TV to capture these moments, others feel that the line has been crossed. It's not just about what's real, it's about how that reality is framed. And in this case, many viewers believe that the producers went too far in highlighting the Brown family's emotional turmoil for the sake of drama. And as much as we love the show, it's impossible to ignore that uncomfortable feeling lingering in the background. Are we watching a family's true struggle? Or are we watching a manufactured drama built on their pain? There's no denying the raw, emotional toll reality TV can take on its stars. And Sister Wives has certainly shown us that. The Brown family, over the years, has been under the microscope in ways few families would ever agree to. Their private lives, love, heartbreak, joy, and pain have been laid bare for millions of viewers to watch. But as much as it offers us a window into their world, we have to ask, what's the cost of exposing such personal grief for the sake of entertainment? And more specifically, what happens when that grief is manipulated, edited, and reshaped into a TV narrative? When it comes to the memorial for Garrison Brown, it's impossible to ignore the emotional and social impact of the situation. The memorial was supposed to be about honoring the memory of Garrison, a son lost far too soon. It should have been a time for the family to reflect, grieve, and find some semblance of peace. But, as we saw, the event became less about remembering Garrison and more about highlighting the ongoing dysfunction between Cody, his children, and Robin. And here's the thing that's hard to ignore. The more we see this kind of emotional chaos aired on TV, the more it feels like we, as the audience, are complicit in it. The Brown family's personal struggles have been put on display for over a decade, and while we've been given glimpses of their lives, we've also seen how they have been forced to navigate the public's judgment. But it's not just the Browns who suffer. There's a ripple effect that extends far beyond the family. The emotional toll on viewers is real too. Think about it. The way these moments are edited and presented doesn't just affect the people involved. It affects how we, as an audience, perceive them. For example, Robin's insensitive behavior during the memorial, as highlighted by the editors, may cause many viewers to despise her. In contrast, Cody's coldness toward his children creates sympathy from those who see him as a distant father figure. But what we often forget is that we, as the audience, don't get the full story. We only get what the producers choose to show us. And when those choices are made with the goal of stirring up controversy, it risks turning these real-life struggles into a form of emotional voyeurism. Let's pause for a second and think about how much we really know about these people's lives. We don't know what happens behind closed doors when the cameras are off. Sure, we get a sense of who they are through their on-screen personas, but do we really know the depth of their pain, or are we just scratching the surface? And when we only see bits and pieces of their lives edited into neat little storylines, we lose the ability to truly empathize with them as human beings. Instead, they become characters in a drama, people we root for, people we love to hate, people we gossip about. But how much of that is real, and how much of it is a narrative that's been constructed for our consumption? This is where the social impact of reality TV comes into play. Reality shows, at their best, can offer viewers an opportunity to connect with others, to see similarities in their lives, and to feel less alone in their struggles. But when those struggles are manipulated for dramatic effect, it becomes less about connection and more about entertainment. And in the case of Sister Wives, the emotional toll on the Brown family and on the viewers is undeniable. We're left questioning whether the true cost of these shows is worth the spectacle. It's also worth considering the ethical implications of airing such personal, painful moments for entertainment. Reality TV thrives on conflict, and when you have a family as complex as the Browns, that conflict is almost impossible to avoid. But should that conflict be used as fodder for a TV show? Should the grief over the loss of a child be turned into dramatic content that viewers can't look away from? There's a fine line between exposing the realities of a family's struggles and exploiting those struggles for ratings. The Brown family has, no doubt, given us some of the most compelling reality TV moments in recent history. But with each episode that showcases their pain, the question arises: are we crossing a line between authentic storytelling and the exploitation of their lives for entertainment? The emotional toll on the family is clear, but what about the emotional toll on us, the viewers? When we're glued to the screen, captivated by the drama, are we forgetting that these are real people with real feelings? And then there's the lasting impact on the Brown children, who have grown up with the world watching them. Cody's strained relationships with his kids, especially his eldest son Logan, were on full display during the memorial. The tension between father and son, the emotional coldness, the lack of support, it's all there for the world to see. And yet, we can't help but wonder, what kind of long-term effects does this kind of exposure have on their relationship? Can a bond between father and child truly heal after years of being scrutinized by millions of people? This brings us back to the question of whether it's fair to air such deeply personal moments for the world to see. The Brown family didn't just sign up for a reality TV show. They signed up to have their most intimate struggles, their hardest moments, put on display for the masses. And while Sister Wives has certainly given us a window into their lives, it's clear that the emotional and social impacts of that exposure are far-reaching. The Browns are not just reality TV stars, they're real people, living out real struggles in front of millions. And as we continue to watch their story unfold, it's essential to ask, is this entertainment, or is it something more profound and potentially harmful than we realize? The emotional toll is real. The social implications are vast, and the question remains, how far is too far when it comes to airing the most personal parts of someone's life? With the Brown family's grief so intricately intertwined with the show's narrative, it's hard not to wonder whether reality TV is worth the price they've had to pay. The memorial episode of Sister Wives was more than just an airing of grief. It was a vivid illustration of the emotional and social costs of living life under a microscope. As we saw the Brown family navigate the loss of Garrison, it became painfully clear how unresolved family issues, when laid bare for all to see, can deepen the wounds that grief already inflicts. The tension between Cody and his children, especially Logan, and Robin's inability to recognize the gravity of the situation, left us questioning the morality of turning such personal pain into entertainment. As viewers, we may be entertained, but what are we really consuming when we watch these deeply human moments? The consequences of exposing real family struggles are far-reaching, and it raises the question, At what point does reality TV stop being a reflection of real life and become an exploitation of it? I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think these personal moments should be aired for the world to see, or should reality TV respect the privacy of its stars? Drop your opinions in the comments and don't forget to subscribe for more updates on Sister Wives and other compelling stories.